The story kicks off in a high school locker room where Robbie, a nerdy, overweight kid, is having a rare moment of peace. He figured he was safe in the shower until out of nowhere, a bunch of bullies burst in, yank him out, and haul him into the gym during the big end-of-year assembly. Standing there completely naked and humiliated, the incident becomes the turning point for Robbie. From that day on, his mission in life becomes clear. Become the ultimate tough guy, a living nightmare for anyone who ever laughed at him. Meanwhile, Kelvin Joyner, better known as the Golden Jet, is riding high as the most popular guy in school. He's about to be crowned Student of the Year, soaking in the cheers from the crowd. But just when the ceremony hits its peak, everything goes sideways. The doors slam open, and in flies Robbie Wyrdich, tossed onto the stage stark naked. The applause turns into uncontrollable laughter that spreads through the gym like wildfire. Kelvin's confident grin fades fast. While everyone else laughs, Kelvin does something unexpected. He walks up, takes off his jacket, and wraps it around Robbie's shoulders. The laughter slowly dies down as Robbie bolts off the stage, covered and shaken but no longer exposed. Kelvin quietly heads back to the mic, leaving a strong impression on everyone, especially Robbie. Fast forward 20 years, and Kelvin's life isn't exactly what people expected. He's not the golden boy anymore, just a regular office worker stuck in a boring accounting job, watching others climb the ladder while he stays put. During lunch with his wife Maggie, who used to be his high school crush, Kelvin watches some coworkers celebrate a promotion nearby. It only makes him feel worse. Maggie tries to lift his spirits by showing off the dress she's excited to wear to their upcoming 20th anniversary class reunion. But Kelvin hesitates before finally admitting he doesn't really want to go. Maggie gets frustrated, telling him that his constant negativity is starting to take a toll on their marriage. Back at work, Kelvin scrolls mindlessly through Facebook trying to kill time. A friend request pops up from someone named Bob Stone, a name he doesn't recognize. Out of curiosity, he accepts. Moments later, a message comes through asking if they can meet up. After a few messages back and forth, Kelvin drops his phone in shock. Bob Stone? That's Robbie Wyrdich. Still stunned, Kelvin agrees to meet him that night. When he tells Maggie, she's skeptical at first but remembers the name and lets him go. At the bar that evening, Kelvin is greeted by a huge, ripped guy full of confidence. Bob Stone. Kelvin can barely believe it. This can't be the same Robbie who got made fun of in front of the whole school. As they talk, Bob casually mentions he used to work for the government, but recently lost his job. They laugh and catch up until Bob excuses himself to grab drinks. Then, another guy tries to slide into Bob's seat. Kelvin tries to smooth things over politely, but when Bob returns, things get intense real quick. "Those guns don't scare me, buddy," the guy sneers. "Let's see what you got." Before Kelvin can react, Bob smashes the guy's face in, grabs Kelvin by the arm, and drags him out of the bar before anyone can stop them. Kelvin is still reeling. "That was awesome," he says, half laughing, half in shock. Bob leads Kelvin back to their old high school, where memories and old feelings start bubbling up again. Bob talks about how much that humiliation messed him up, and Kelvin admits he feels like he never lived up to the hype everyone had for him back then. To lighten the mood, Bob dares Kelvin to do the famous backflip he used to pull off in high school. Kelvin gives it a shot, but ends up falling flat on his face in a totally awkward way. Oh man, oh no. Later that night, back at Kelvin's place, Bob casually asks for help with a legal issue related to his parole. Confused but trying to be a good sport, Kelvin agrees. He pulls up Bob's file on his laptop and stumbles upon something way bigger than he expected. Offshore bank accounts loaded with millions. Before Bob can explain, he accidentally spills beer on the laptop, frying it. Bob shrugs it off and asks if he can crash at Kelvin's for the night. Kelvin reluctantly agrees. The next morning, someone pounds on the door. Kelvin opens it to find a group of CIA agents led by a serious-looking woman named Agent Harris. She barges in, demanding to know where Bob is. Kelvin tries to explain Bob stayed over, but when they search the house, there's no sign of him. Harris drops a bomb. Bob is wanted for treason, murder, and stealing top-secret data, stuff he supposedly plans to sell to foreign governments. Kelvin freezes when Harris adds one more thing. Bob listed him as his emergency contact on official papers. Panic sets in. Kelvin denies knowing anything, realizing too late that he's now tangled up in something way bigger and far more dangerous than he ever imagined. At work, Kelvin gets a surprise call from Bob, who casually drops that he's hiding somewhere inside the building. Freaking out and desperate to get as far away from the mess as possible, Kelvin immediately calls the CIA. "It's in the stairwell," he blurts. "2 floors down. Send the team." Agent Harris and her crew storm the office like it's an action movie scene, but Bob, slick as ever, slips past them like they're standing still. Before Kelvin can sneak out, Bob corners him. "Are you in or out?" Bob demands. Kelvin, soaked and losing his mind, yells, "I don't want to be part of any of this." Bob just smirks. "Too late, buddy. You're already neck deep." With zero chill, Bob ties a tie around a sprinkler pipe and lights it on fire, setting off more alarms and sending everyone into full panic mode. Then out of nowhere, he tackles Calvin to the ground. "I'm taking him hostage," Bob shouts, while Calvin flails around like a confused noodle. The CIA bursts in, guns blazing, literally, bullets flying everywhere. Calvin tries crawling to safety, but ends up getting hilariously stuck in a mail cart, accidentally becoming the star of the office disaster. Bob takes down agents like he's in a video game until one wraps a chain around his neck and starts choking him out. Gasping, Bob screams at Calvin for help. Calvin, now holding a gun like he has no idea what it is, fires it by accident and somehow nails the agent, saving Bob's life. Before the CIA can regroup, Bob knocks another agent out cold, tosses Calvin into a postal cart like a sack of potatoes, and charges toward the exit. Just as they're about to escape, Agent Harris blocks their path with backup in tow. Calvin, still clinging to the hope of going back to normal, tries to talk his way out. Harris cuts him off. "You're coming in with us." Bob, being Bob, hits the sprinklers again and chucks a flashbang that blinds everyone. With flair, he grabs Calvin and leaps through a window, landing perfectly on a giant inflatable gorilla outside. As bullets whiz past, the two scramble into a waiting Uber and peel off. Calvin, still trying to wrap his head around everything, demands answers. Bob, calm as if he's ordering lunch, explains, "The stolen codes are part of a secret U.S. spy program that could bring down national security. We've got to stop the deal," he says, like it's the most obvious thing in the world. Calvin, not buying it, tells Bob he should turn himself in. But Bob reminds him they're both officially on the run now. If they want to clear their names, they've got to do it themselves. Before Calvin can even process this wild theory, their Uber makes a sharp turn. Literally. A motorcyclist slams into the car, smacking Bob in the face with a spinning tire. Bob doesn't even blink. He retaliates by chucking a metal pipe into the bike's wheel, sending the rider flying. While Bob handles business, Calvin sees his shot, jumps on the bike, and peels off. "You got this, man," he yells over his shoulder, leaving Bob to fight off the rest solo. Desperate to go back to his old life, Calvin calls Maggie and begs her to meet him at their therapist's office instead of heading home. When she shows up, she instantly senses something's off. Before Calvin can explain, Agent Harris pulls up. "Get in," she barks, shoving him into a van for questioning. She accuses Bob of being the infamous Black Badger, a rogue agent who betrayed his partner to steal the codes. But she needs Calvin's help because Bob actually trusts him. Reluctantly, Calvin agrees. Armed with a tracking device, he's sent into the field to bait Bob out of hiding. Back at the therapist's office, things take a weird turn when Bob unexpectedly walks in for couples therapy. Playing along like it's nothing, Bob throws himself into the session with full enthusiasm, much to Calvin's horror. Tension builds as Calvin tries to keep Maggie from catching on, but eventually he snaps. Maggie misinterprets his outburst, thinking he's checked out of their marriage. Heartbroken, she storms out, leaving Calvin crushed and deeper in Bob's madness than ever. After Maggie leaves, Bob convinces Calvin to help him one last time, promising he's fighting for the right reasons. Grudgingly, Calvin agrees. They decide to track down Trevor, Bob's high school bully, who might have info on the code transaction. At first, Trevor plays nice, offering a half-ass apology for how he treated Bob back then. But the fake niceness doesn't last long. His smirk returns as he openly brags about being just as much of a jerk as ever, reveling in every cruel memory. Bob is visibly shaken after the confrontation. He doesn't say a word, just walks off, lost in his thoughts. Calvin, though, he's not done with Trevor yet. He turns back to Trevor, lays into him hard for being such a jerk, and somehow manages to get the transaction number out of him without another punch thrown. As Calvin heads out, his phone rings. It's Agent Harris. She's got bad news and an even worse offer. "Turn Bob in," she says coldly, "or Maggie gets charged with conspiracy." Outside, Bob finally stops walking and turns to Calvin. He apologizes, really means it, and admits that Calvin was the only person who ever showed him any real kindness. He promises he won't betray him, but Calvin can't hold it in anymore. Guilt eats at him until he blurts out the truth. He already gave their location to Harris. Sure enough, within minutes, CIA agents swarm the place. Both men are cuffed and hauled away. While locked up, Calvin listens in horror as Harris interrogates and tortures Bob in a secret room nearby. The guilt becomes unbearable, so he snaps. Calvin overpowers a guard, grabs a weapon, and forces his way into Bob's cell. Inside, he frees Bob and takes down Harris, who warns him he's making a huge mistake. He doesn't care. "I'm doing what's right," Calvin says firmly. As they escape, Bob seems rattled. He starts doubting himself again, insisting he's still just Robbie the Tool and definitely not some spy legend. Calvin cuts him off. "You think Bob Stone is just a fake name? Number, that's who you became. Just like I used to be the Golden Jet. You gotta own who you are now." Bob thinks about it, and slowly he finds his confidence again. They shake hands. But then Calvin notices Bob's busted finger. Oh, God. Oh, no. A silent reminder of how deep they're in. They keep moving. Calvin ends up taking down more agents than he ever thought possible. Even surprises himself. Huh. Maybe I am good at this, he jokes, before immediately realizing he's committing actual crimes. When a stolen keycard fails to open a gate, Bob calmly solves the problem by pulling a gun on a guard and forcing them to let them through. They steal a car, Bob hands Calvin a phone and tells him to plug the transaction codes into a map app. The data points to Boston, but they need a plane to get there fast. At a private airfield, Calvin distracts a security guard with an overly dramatic, unnecessarily complicated story, while Bob sneaks into the hangar and rolls a plane out onto the runway. They take off, and as they fly, Calvin starts putting things together. He voices a wild theory. What if Agent Harris is actually the Black Badger? When they land, the supposed drop-off spot feels way too exposed. Calvin spots an underground parking garage nearby and figures the real deal must be happening there. Bob suggests splitting up, but Calvin refuses. We stick together. If this goes south, we go down together. Inside the garage, Bob meets the buyer like he's supposed to. Meanwhile, Calvin sneaks around outside and sees Harris arriving. Convinced she's the traitor, he follows her and instantly gets caught in the middle of the mess. Back in the garage, Bob hands over the package. But just as the deal looks like it's going through, the truth drops like a bomb. Phil, Bob's supposedly dead partner, steps out of the shadows and smirks. I'm the real Black Badger. Right on cue, Calvin bursts in, just in time to see both Bob and Phil pointing fingers, each claiming the other is the traitor. Before anyone can sort it out, Harris storms in, guns blazing. Chaos explodes. Calvin ducks behind cover, clutching the drives as bullets whiz past. He makes a break for it, because yeah, his life literally depends on it. One of the buyers chases him in a car, but Bob swoops in last minute and saves him. Like some kind of weird action hero, Calvin keeps running and ends up cornered on a bridge. That's where it all comes to a head. Bob and Phil face off, each trying to convince Calvin they're the good guy. A shootout erupts, bullets flying, tension sky high. In the panic, Calvin accidentally shoots Bob. He freezes, horrified. He tries to aim at Phil next, but his gun just clicks, empty. Phil grins like a villain from a cheesy spy flick. He gloats, calling Bob weak and admitting he faked his death and framed Bob for everything. Classic evil monologue mode. He orders Calvin to kneel, loving every second of his moment in power. Desperate, Calvin does the only thing he can think of. He tries his infamous golden jet flip as a distraction. It goes hilariously wrong. He flips halfway and crashes to the ground like a confused penguin, but it works, just enough. Bob uses the distraction to regain control. With pure rage and a little bit of style, he takes Phil down, hard, like really hard. Ends up ripping out Phil's windpipe and tossing his body into the river like it's nothing. Game, set, match. With the chaos finally behind them, Bob and Calvin hand over the encryption drives to Agent Harris. Surprisingly, instead of arresting them or giving her usual icy stare, she actually says thanks and drops a bombshell. You ever think about working for us? She says, looking straight at Calvin. He blinks. Later, at the high school reunion, Maggie corners Calvin, arms crossed, demanding answers for his bizarre behavior. Before he can stumble through an explanation, Bob swoops in like a smooth-talking hero, flashing his charm and cracking jokes, even suggesting they bring their therapist next time. It's weirdly effective. Maggie softens. Calvin, feeling oddly confident now, looks her in the eye and says, You're the reason I'm happy. None of the other crap matters. Maggie smiles, clearly moved, and they share a kiss, officially putting the drama behind them. Inside the gym, the prom king and queen are announced, and when Bob's name is called, everyone loses it. Bob himself looks stunned. For a second, he freezes, like he's reliving that moment from 20 years ago. But this time, it's different. Trevor, still somehow clinging to his bully persona like it's a career, seizes the moment to make a sarcastic comment. Classic move. But this time, Bob doesn't flinch. He walks right up to Trevor, winds up, and wham, knocks him flat on his back. The crowd goes wild. Bob grabs the mic and gives a heartfelt speech, thanking Calvin for helping him embrace who he really is, and reminding everyone that it's never too late to own your story. The gym erupts in applause. Then comes the moment no one sees coming. Bob starts taking off his clothes, standing there in front of the whole school. No shame, no fear. He just stands tall, and instead of laughing or sneering, the room cheers. Not out of pity, out of respect. The place where he was once humiliated becomes the stage for his biggest win. To top it all off, Bob reconnects with his old high school crush, who actually flirts with him this time, and shares a kiss that feels like the perfect ending. Months later, Maggie's visibly pregnant, and she and Calvin are getting ready for the next chapter of their lives. Outside their house, Bob shows up to wish Calvin luck on his first day as a full-time CIA agent. As a gift, he hands him his old high school blazer, a symbol of how far they've both come. The two hop into a car and drive off together, side by side, their unlikely friendship stronger than ever.